What's up, y'all? We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I'm your host, Justin Michael. Welcome to the Losers Lounge, presented by Toyota. Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Uh, pretty brutal way to go down. Pretty fitting way to go down. This was a game of a lot of emotions. I certainly had to change my notes based on how the fourth quarter played out versus, like how we were sitting at halftime and then third quarter. Oregon State had a possession that went over 10 minutes in that third quarter. CSU only touched the ball once. Then all of a sudden the offense comes to life. You score 3 times in the fourth. You force overtime. Obviously, the game ends up going to double overtime where you fall 39-31. In a really tough setting. Corvallis is not an easy place to play. We talked about that going into the game. We also talked about needing to essentially play a perfect game to have a chance in this one as double-digit dogs against a team that when they get up, they can really run it down your throat. Some injuries, factored into the equation for Oregon State, not having that two-headed monster that they typically had, really had to lean on Hankerson. He was great in that game. McCoy, very limited as a passer on Oregon State's side, but he killed CSU on the ground. 3 rushing touchdowns, all on that option keeper. They could not stop him on the ground. In a lot of ways, I feel like this was just kind of the perfect summation of what CSU is right now. They've got some guys that are highly talented and can really make some plays, and you see that in certain moments, whether it's the Gabe Kershke interception early, or he also had a terrific blitz where he really drilled McCoy, perfectly timed up the gut. Offensively, Braden made some really nice throws at times. Avery Morrow, monster game. We'll get into all the stats and that type of stuff. Having Torrey back was obviously massive. He had 150 receiving yards. I mean, it looks a lot different when he's out there. At the same time, I'm pretty dumbfounded that this team just continues to shoot themselves in the foot the way that they do repeatedly. This was an opportunity for a signature win, for really a transformative moment in the program. You're in year 3. You don't really have that key signature win over a team that you could really frame as better than you. And you go out on the road, and honestly, for a lot of the night, I feel like CSU was the better team. They looked more talented at a lot of moments in this game on both sides of the ball. And they also looked incredibly undisciplined. The penalties are just killer. The timeliness of the penalties, especially, just brutal. Drive killers on offense, drive extenders defensively, a couple of them on third down. You have some brutal defensive holding penalties in the end zone that allow Oregon State to get an easy touchdown. I mean, it's just a synopsis of what this team is right now, and they lack killer instinct. It's not necessarily a talent issue, I don't think. I think it's a mentality issue, honestly. But then what's confusing is you see the offense really come to life the way it did against Hawaii last year, where you don't do much of anything, and then all of a sudden it flips a switch. Obviously, you were running the ball really well, but really just had no life with the passing game outside of a couple of plays. And then you find a lot of success there in the fourth quarter. Really, really frustrating night for CSU fans. But again, it felt pretty fitting, given the way that this one played out, that you would lose in kind of a dumb way. Felt very similar to last year, where you can't get a stop late after you go down and take the lead. I did have a critical tweet of Freddie Banks from the DNVR account saying he hadn't learned a thing. Was pointed out that they actually were sending a decent amount of pressure, but still, dropping into, a soft zone and coverage and just kind of letting them go right up the field to tie the game there late, and then can't get a stop on either possession in overtime. I mean, it just felt like CU last year. It felt like UNLV last year. It felt like Hawaii last year. And I think that's kind of the problem with where we're at with this program right now, is you've just not seen any growth in any of the critical areas. They still make the same mistakes. They have penalties and really big moments. It had not been an issue in every game this season, and that was actually something that I highlighted with Dre on Thursday, was that over the majority of the season, CSU has actually been fairly unpenalized. The problem is in the two biggest games of the season so far, CU and Oregon State. It's really reared its ugly head, and it's cost them in key spots. I mean, you had the defensive penalties that extended drives for Oregon State tonight. You had a killer holding call that killed a drive that had some positive momentum there in the third quarter. I mean, they find ways to beat themselves, and that's kind of what it comes down to. And I feel like this loss is going to have pretty significant implications in the grand scheme of things. I think you lost a significant portion of the fan base tonight in terms of supporting this regime. It's tough to feel good about it. Like, yes, they played really hard, and I do want to commend the players for the heart they showed to come back against a team that's frankly pretty tough to come back against in a setting that's not an easy place to play. But also, you sit here and you think about the missed opportunities, both early and late, and it's really frustrating because you probably should have never been in that position in the first place. With getting those turnovers early and capitalizing on the first one, you're sitting there with an opportunity to go up a couple of scores, and instead, after essentially dominating the first 15 minutes, you're sitting there with a tie game. And it just felt so similar. We've been in this spot so many times over the years. It really reminded me of the game against Vanderbilt a couple years ago, where you basically dominated the first two quarters, and you're sitting there at halftime like, well, it's a game. And actually, you're down at the half in this one. So it was just, it was Ram life in a nutshell. This was such a big swing game for your season. If you find a way to steal this one, even as ugly as it was, even with the mistakes that you had, you feel so much differently going into these next couple of weeks. And now you're in a pretty precarious position as a program. I mean, you've got a San Jose State team coming to town next week that has looked highly explosive, much more consistently than you have. Defensively, they've been up and down, so you might be able to move the ball on them. But I mean, again, do you trust this defense to get a stop in a key spot? Even as good as they looked and as dominant as they were early, again, when the game's on the line there, still it's just the same old thing that we've seen for 3 straight years. If you lose this game against San Jose State, you're now going into the spring sitting at 2-4 with a possibility of being 2-5. And I know that Air Force has looked downright awful, but you haven't beat Air Force in the spring since 2002. And based on how undisciplined this team continues to be, I don't see I don't see the Rams going into the springs and pulling out a game against that team. And in that setting, I mean, you got torched with the option carries tonight. There's just a lot of bad vibes at the moment, unfortunately. And it's a shame because, frankly, the players played their asses off tonight. They played really hard. It was great to see Torrey and Newer back out there. You saw some guys make some plays. You also just saw a program that can't get out of its own way. And, almost halfway through the season in year 3 of this coaching staff, it's not good enough right now. It's not good enough. And you missed yet another opportunity to pull off a big win. And those are the ones that sting. And these are the ones you look back on because, like I said, if you pull that out, all of a sudden you feel so much better going into the league slate. And that's what's crazy about this is we haven't even gotten to the conference games. Like, in theory, you could win the next 2 weeks, be sitting there, at 2-0 in league play with an opportunity to potentially play your way into the Mountain West Championship with a conference schedule that's fairly, favorable. And instead it feels so daunting at this moment. And it's like, can they even squeak out 6-6? It was always bowl or bust this season. But even with a bowl game, I think it's going to be hard to sell running this back based on the lack of growth that we've seen so far. And that's not to say definitively that there's going to be a head coach change or something like that, but I don't see how you could do nothing. I don't see how you could not change anything, like a coordinator, a position, something. I don't know. I don't know where you go from here, but I know that this was a massive missed opportunity, and it feels like there's going to be some pretty significant implications from this one in the grand scheme of things. I'm going to get into my takeaways. We'll talk about this game, where it kind of went wrong, what they did well, all that. But get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. They're an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames, crystal clear optics. It makes them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. I wear my Shady Rays while I'm mowing the lawn, wear my Shady Rays while I'm tailgating, wear them just about doing everything. I'll wear them tomorrow going down to the Broncos game. Exclusively for listeners, Shady Rays giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use the code DNVR for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I also want to talk to you guys about Toyota, the official vehicle of DNVR. Toyota, for generations, trucks have been a part of their DNA. They're durable, they're destined for greatness, and they're perfect for Colorado. What's great about Toyota SUVs, you get all the functionality, the ability to head out to the mountains, to do all that exploring and really make the most of this wonderful state. But, they're not going to be completely, they're not going to be unrealistic for day-to-day driving. You can drive them in the city and you don't have to sacrifice gas mileage or anything like that. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, 16 hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. I appreciate all you guys in the Toyota chat. Seems like it's very active. Alyssa behind the scenes will mark some questions, comments, and stuff like that we'll get to at the end. That'll be worth responding to. Gonna try my best to keep this one on schedule here, because I think it's really easy, especially post game and the emotion of things, to kind of get derailed. But really just a frustrating night. And in some ways, coming back and losing that way in double overtime only makes it that much more worse, because you can see in the flashes what this team is capable of. You also see what continues to hold them back, and it's a lack of discipline. It's just so many self-inflicted wounds, from penalties to turnovers to, tonight, especially just the penalties, to a lack of rhythm with even getting lined up. You had to call at least 4 or 5 timeouts to prevent delay of games, got called for a delay of game on 4 or 5 other occasions. Really just not in sync, it doesn't seem like, between Norvell and BFN at the moment. Saw it come to life a little bit in the fourth quarter, and that's encouraging. I would like to see them lean on some of those concepts more. I like that they got BFN, rolling out at times. I like that you took some vertical shots. I like that, you got some crossers and going, and some of the concepts that we expected to see in the air raid. Again, they have not been an air raid team this year by, what they're running functionally. Now, to me, I don't really care. I see so many people fixating on air raid, it's not the air raid, it's not the air. I don't care. If you're running the ball effectively, that's fine, but you have to create the explosive plays. Now, they did a little bit of that tonight. They just didn't do it consistently, and they really missed some opportunities early on in the game to open it up. You run the flea flicker, and Jordan Ross just gets a little bit antsy, and it doesn't wait for the play to develop, takes off a little bit early, ends up getting called for offensive pass interference. That's a missed shot. There was another opportunity to go deep over the top to Torrey. Might have been an overthrow, might have been an instance of Torrey not being 100%. Ryan Leaf said that he thought that Braden placed it perfectly. I thought it was a pretty good ball myself. Braden had some other moments where he did miss some throws. He also had some moments where he made some pretty darn impressive ones, including late. But really, like, the tail of this one is penalties, is what it comes down to. You have 13 penalties for 82 yards. Just about all of them were untimely. On top of that, just atrocious on third down. 4 of 12 on third down in the game. All 4 of those came on the same drive. It was that scoring drive at the beginning of the fourth quarter, after you finally get the ball back, after Oregon State just ran the ball down your throat for the majority of the third quarter, managed to waste off over 10 minutes of game time. That was a huge sequence. I do credit the team for being able to respond from it. Obviously, after going down and scoring, you then get a stop yourself. All that was huge. You did a lot of stuff in tough spots to give yourself a position, or to put yourself in position to be able to come back. The problem was you shouldn't have ever been in that position in the first place, and that's where it's frustrating. It's just the missed opportunities you had in the first half to extend the lead, on top of the missed opportunities late to put it away. And it's just the same old song, same old dance with this program, and they continue to find ways to do less with more, and it's really excruciating at this point at times. Really frustrating, especially because again, I do feel like for a lot of the night you looked like the more talented team. They were really flying around defensively. You get a couple of turnovers, which was huge. I love the way that guys were hitting tonight. I do think that that was encouraging from an effort standpoint. I thought a lot of the time they were in pretty good position. They did struggle with some of those option keepers, and that's discouraging. With Air Force coming up in a couple of weeks, their quarterback really can run, but still, the corners at times I felt like really stepped up and made some nice plays on the perimeter in the run game. Elias Larry had that PBU late that allowed you to get the ball back. If you don't get that there, you're probably not even getting a chance to send it to overtime in the first place. But then again, as well as you played for, the first, I don't know, 50 minutes or so, 55 minutes, defensively up 3, you still allow them to go right down the field and kick the field goal, tie it, and then just, you allow them to do their thing offensively, and both overtime periods can't get a stop on the 2-point conversion. I just couldn't get off the field in some really important stretches. And then offensively, really looked out of sorts in that double overtime period. I don't know if they just ran out of money plays or what, but it didn't really seem like they had anything they felt super comfortable to go to in the passing game. Obviously, you run it like 6 out of 7 carries. I mean, you get the PI on Torrey, and then you still try and run it 3 straight times despite not generating any traction at that point of the game. I mean, there's a lot I can Monday morning quarterback here and second guess. But I just, more than anything, I'm just disappointed to see this team lose in the same ways that they've lost for multiple years. It's just a lack of growth that continues to frustrate me. The O-line looked really good for a lot of the night. You did have the key holding in a series that really cost you on Drew Moss, and that was unfortunate because he had a great game. The guards in particular were really just mauling people in the run game. Avery Morrow did a great job of taking advantage of that. I mean, he was a workhorse tonight. He has been so productive. I mean, Ashton Jeanty obviously is the best running back in the league. That's not even a debate at this point. But Avery, I think, is probably played it himself into that running back 2 role. I mean, he's gonna, if he continues to produce like this, he'll be in the all conference mix. I mean, there's a couple of backs that are really having success this year, but he has been the brightest spot in an offense that has largely kind of underwhelmed and not lived up to the expectations. Obviously, stylistically, it's not what we expected. I don't fixate on that as much because I do think being able to run the ball in theory should allow you to win more of these tight games, but it didn't end up proven to be the difference in this one. And that's where it becomes kind of a bitter pill to swallow, is that's exactly why in theory you're leaning into this ground game and having that be more of your identity so that you don't blow these types of games and you still find a way to lose it. And again, like I don't know, maybe it's just one of these things that's inevitable with CSU at this point. It feels like, the Detroit Lions for all those years, or, whoever you want to call, there's an inevitability with the way that we find ways to beat ourselves. And it doesn't matter who's out there. It doesn't matter what type of regime you've got. It doesn't matter, the people change, the coaches change, the styles change, and the results just end up being the same. And that's where it's disheartening of potentially being in a position of, maybe having to rebuild again here in a couple of years, or in a couple of months, potentially. It's tough to sell this to the fan base right now. It is. And I inherently want to go as positive as I possibly can, as frequently as I can. And when you lose these games the way that they continue to lose them, it just makes it impossible. They showed a lot of heart, and that's kind of the bare minimum is effort. But I don't want that to get lost, because it was a very valiant comeback effort. The problem is we've seen this so many times, and again, I keep coming back to, you shouldn't have dug yourself in this hole in the first place with the way that you started this game. And to me, the turning point was that 4th and 2 where you elect to punt. You call 2 timeouts in a 3-play sequence, And I know Torrey got dinged up, so maybe that's what changed things with Norvell. You were going to go for it. Torrey gets dinged up. You're not going to have him out there. You decided to punt. But I felt like for a lot of this night, one side played not to lose and one side played to win. And, on top of third down disparity, Oregon State went 3 of 3 on fourth down, and CSU elected a couple of times to kick it away instead of being aggressive, instead of showing some killer instinct, playing to win. They did then get aggressive later in the game, and it reminded me a little bit of like the Centeo Adazio moments where you would try and run the ball for 3 straight quarters, and all of a sudden they'd go to the spread and let him air it out, and he'd end up throwing like for 300 yards in the last quarter of a half. And you sit here and ask, why didn't you open it up a little bit sooner? I don't know. I don't know at this point. I don't know what the offense's identity is. I don't know where you go from here. I don't know how you respond from such an excruciating loss, especially given how anticlimactic that first month was. I think you already had some players that were kind of on edge in the first place. Do you lose the locker room after a loss like this? Allegedly, I'm not out in Corvallis, but Kevin said that Braden and Chase Wilson post game still fairly optimistic. Talks about guys playing for each other and being close to breaking out. I feel like we've been close to breaking out for about 2.5 years now, and it ends up being a lot of the same. The ground game is good. They are running the ball with effectiveness for the majority, but as I talked about a week ago, the problem is as much as they are running the ball with success for the majority of the game in key spots, when they need to put it away, they're still kind of struggling. When you need to run the ball in overtime, not able to do so. Yeah, as Anthony says in the Toyota chat, NCAA not allowing spikes with under 3 seconds is dumb too. I don't know the why. I mean, I guess it made more sense back in the day when you had so many more clock stoppages that, but especially now when you've essentially made it an NFL style clock. I guess not in the last 2 minutes, but yeah, I don't understand that either. They've got to create more opportunities vertically. They've got to create more in the play action. I mean, you didn't turn the ball over tonight. I guess that's positive. It's positive that they showed all that fight and came back. It's just, again, outside of that, I don't really know what to say. I don't know how you feel good about the current state of the program. You're in a really rough spot. You're in a really rough spot going into a stretch of your schedule that's a hell of a lot more tough than you would have anticipated at the beginning of the year. I mean, none of these games are gimmies. In San Jose State, frankly, I think maybe you'll be a small favorite at home, but I expect they'll be underdogs. New Mexico and Nevada sure as hell look a lot more frisky than you would have anticipated coming in. And as bad as Air Force looks, and they look bad, I haven't seen CSU win in the spring since I was 7 years old. So I'm certainly not going to go in there anticipating that it's going to happen. And you can't really feel that differently about the border war. Honestly, like Wyoming's looked rough. You beat them once since 2016, and you're still showing all the same struggles that you've shown in recent years that have cost you in those big games against your rivals and the biggest moments, when you're on the road with a chance to steal a win against a really good UNLV team, when you're on the road to steal a win against a good and competitive Oregon State team. It's not like it's a disaster for 60 minutes. And in some ways that's more frustrating because it's not like they're just purely a bad team. It's not like there's just no talent whatsoever, but they find ways to beat themselves. And we just keep coming back to these same talking points, and it feels like Groundhog Day week after week. And I know the fans are tired of it. I'm sure the administration is looking around and can sense the angst and the discontent amongst the fan base, and that's not a good spot. I mean, I'm not trying to be too dramatic or use too much hyperbole or anything like that, but I mean, we've talked about it a ton this season. The expectations were always bowl or bust. You have 7 home games. You have so many first-year staffs on the schedule. Not on top of that, now you've got the move to the Pac-12 looming, which just puts more pressure on all of this to succeed. And right now, you keep coming up short, and it's highly disheartening, and it's frustrating because you do flash some really special talent at times. And it'd just be like, if you could harness that and eliminate some of the stupid stuff you do 2 to 3 times a quarter, this probably could be like an 8-win team. And instead, I'm not sure they're even going to be able to go 6-6, which is a crazy spot to be in with the continuity that you had with, bringing the talent back that you brought back. And frankly, after talking a pretty big game in the preseason, we'll keep it going here. I'll shout out some individuals, player of the game, all that kind of stuff. Real quick, I do want to shout out our friends over at Raising Cane's. I could use some Raising Cane's right now, but on your mark, get set, eat. Make a pit stop at Raising Cane's for craveable hand-battered chicken fingers. They're awesome. Really love the fries as well. Not everybody's into those crispy crinkle cut fries, but when you get them fresh, man, do they slap, especially with that cane sauce, buttery Texas toast. Ooh, I want to eat my feelings right now. For cooked order, hand-battered chicken fingers, race into Raising Cane's. Turbocharge your chicken fingers. Get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through the mobile app, Raising Cane's Chicken Finger, one love. I also want to talk to you guys about Empire today. Nobody does it better than Empire. With Empire, you get shop-at-home convenience, the right product for your needs, quick and professional installation, plus a price match guarantee. Empire today is the best place to get new flooring. There's a whole bunch of copycats out there, but they can't touch Empire, not on their quality, not on their service, not on their speed. So what they do is they advertise a bunch of low-quality junk that Empire is not even willing to keep in their selection. What they omit is just as important as what they show you. They're not trying to overwhelm you with a million different choices. They're trying to help you get the flooring that they need, the type of flooring they would put in their own home. Their virtual floor designer is a great way to see how new floors will look in any space. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners can receive a $350 discount when they use a promo code DNVR. Restrictions to apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. I already mentioned that the turning point felt like was a missed opportunity to go up a couple leads there. Obviously, you could point to like overtime late in the fourth quarter as well. Opportunity to get the win in regulation, not go to overtime in the first place. Instead, Oregon State able to hang around, and that run game eventually wears you out. I really gashed CSU in both the overtime periods. Helmet stickers, some individuals worth acknowledging. I know these always feel hollow in these moments, but try and shout out the guys that did play well, because there were some guys that stepped up in big spots. Avery Morrow, 25 carries, 140 yards, 1 touchdown. Continues to produce in a major way. Justin Marshall, 10 carries for 53 yards and a touchdown. Thought we'd see a little bit more of him in the second half. Potentially got a little bit dinged up there. It looked like he did kind of come up lame on one of those tackles. BFN, 20 of 30 for 263. Surprisingly, a season high after what we saw last year. 2 touchdowns. Thought he did a good job from a decision-making standpoint. Didn't put them in harm's way, which was huge. Made some huge throws down the stretch as well. Gabe Kershke, 3 total tackles. He also had the interception early. Big hit on third down to get a stop. Newer Gatkuth, good to see him back. He had a tackle for loss as well as a forced fumble. Player of the game, it's got to be Torrey Horton on CSU side. 9 catches for 158 yards and a touchdown. Passing offense sure looks a hell of a lot different when he is out there. They've got to unleash it if this team's going to have any chance. I mean, you see those explosive plays and how big they are from flipping, the momentum, and just that quick strike ability. It's hard, even when you're running for 5-6 yards a pop. It's hard to do that for 80 yards down the field. And they've got to find ways to create more of those explosives, especially when you see a guy like Torrey and how open he can get, and the separation that he creates. I mean, he's a different cat out there. It was encouraging to see him making some plays in the passing game. They're going to need him if they have any opportunity of turning this season around. It's just such it's a unique spot, because if you fixate on everything that's gone wrong this year, it's easy to feel how we all feel tonight, which is not very good at all. It's also, you can look at the situation realistically and say you've lost to 3 teams that you were underdogs against. At some point, you have to punch up. At some point, you have to show something against one of these teams and find a way to earn that signature win. And you've had a lot of chances over the last couple of years, whether it was UNLV, whether it was Hawaii last year to, get a bowl game. And instead, they keep finding ways to come up short, and it's really disheartening. Offensively, I don't really know where you go from here. I'm sure they're going to continue to lean on the ground game, but especially with what you saw in the passing game in the fourth quarter, like I would like to see them try and get some up tempo in there at times. Just I feel like Braden operates well out of it. You got to get these receivers in the mix because they're really, really athletic. Yeah. Shout out to all the CU dorks in the comments as well. You guys love me every week. You tune in 60 straight minutes. You have nothing else to do with your life but sit here and troll me. Just fucking losers. Before we get out of here, let's get to your questions and comments. What do we got here from the Toyota chat? Big 216 Teasy says, "Hey Justin, what do you think the temperature is for the coach's seat?" It's hot. It's hot. It might not be scorching, but it's certainly uncomfortably warm at this point. I don't know how it couldn't be at this point. You haven't won a signature game. You continue to beat yourself in the same ways. You're just not showing the growth that you should at this point. Anthony wants to know, BFN Norvell, worrying wasted timeouts cost us the game. Constant turnovers in first, third quarters, terrible. How do we manage the clock better? I mean, in theory, running the ball should help you manage the clock better. I'm not sure with the delay games tonight. It didn't seem like they were having issues getting the ball in or anything like that, or getting the calls in. Kind of just seemed like Braden might have kind of lost track of time, and that's obviously discouraging given where he is as a starter at this point. Anthony says, hopefully Morrow not hurt right. He went down towards the end, has to be running back one. I'm sure he's sore. I mean, after that one, anytime you run the ball 25 times, I mean, you're going to be feeling that one most definitely. But I think he's all right based on what we saw. Joel says, who could you get to replace Norvell? Do you hire someone's offensive coordinator as head coach? Satterfield? I don't know, man. I don't think Norvell is going to give up play calling. So I expect he'll call plays until the very end. I don't have like a list of potential candidates at this stage of the year or anything like that. I think that'd be a little bit dramatic, especially given, like I've said, if you do win next week, you are technically undefeated in conference play and sitting at 500. And then if you beat Air Force, all of a sudden, you look back at this and it's like, oh, they did kind of turn it there and they didn't pull that one out, but they showed a lot of fight. Or you just lose the next couple and you're sitting at 2-5 and your season's over. And then we're very much in that coaching conversation. Crackers College Hoops, why not throw a Hail Mary to the end zone on that final play? I went back and forth on it. I'd rather go vertical as well. You might draw a PI flag. I mean, Torrey, obviously, you've been able to do it before. I'm never a big fan of trying to do the pitch play. I know it can work, and they actually did technically advance the ball, but you're just so likely to end up having an illegal forward pass or a hold or a block in the back or something like that. I never really understand why they go to that. Cameron says, do you think the play calling getting in will get better? I noticed a lot of confusion tonight between BFN and Jay. Some of that might be just be on the road. It's loud. Yeah, I mean, they looked disjointed at times, and that's why it's definitely discouraging. We'll see. I don't know where you go from here. It's been absolutely gut-wrenching for Ram fans for far too long. You've got a big opportunity, obviously, coming up these next couple of weeks to save your season. It doesn't feel like it's hyperbole to say like the staff could be coaching for their jobs next week, and that's just the spot that we're in. I mean, you can't continue to sell this to the fans and expect people to show up. I already imagine that, attendance is going to dip for these next couple games. And frankly, it probably should, because I can't sit here with a straight face and tell people like, this is the best use of your time. It's just, it's maddening. It's maddening to see this team find ways to lose in such predictable and consistently frustrating ways. We'll see what happens. That's all I've got for tonight. Shout out to everybody that's rocking with us, even the trolls. Much love, y'all. Always proud to be. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.